When I was younger, if someone described the game as mature, I assumed that it meant violence, swearing, and edgy content. You know, the kind of stuff that 6-year-old boys really like. But clearly, that's not what true maturity really means. Now I finally understand what a truly mature game looks like, and surprisingly, the DioField Chronicle might be one of the best examples. The story takes place entirely on the island of DioField, which is rich with an energy crystal called Jade. On the continent, the Alliance and the Empire are at a deadlock in the war, and their Jade, which is an essential supply for war, is nearly depleted. We follow a trio of friends who get invited to become the private mercenaries of a nobleman. Before long, they're pulled into a massive conflict involving political struggles, national disputes, and an approaching imperial invasion. As tensions rise, everyone's darker natures begins to surface. This game has one of the bleakest narratives I've experienced. Sure, other games may have more blood or shocking violence, but DioField Chronicle focuses on something deeper, the ugly realities of human nature. The struggles in this story feel grounded enough to be believable. The cruelty isn't exaggerated. It feels natural, almost inevitable. At times the atmosphere can feel suffocating, and in a strange way, that's exactly what makes it compelling. One of the smartest aspects of the story is that the world isn't suffering because of one evil villain. Instead, the world is full of conflict because humans themselves are flawed. Humanity is often its own worst enemy. Even the invading empire isn't necessarily the biggest problem. No faction can truly be called the good guys. Everyone is acting in their own interests. In that sense, it reminds me of stories like The Last of Us, where morality becomes blurry and survival pushes people into difficult choices. The game is deeply political, philosophical, and often uncomfortable. The main character, Andreas, is refreshingly different from the typical JRPG protagonist. He is calm, pragmatic, and extremely professional. He feels less like a heroic adventurer and more like a military strategist, or even a corporate executive. He doesn't appear clearly good or evil. Instead, he's simply practical. In a harsh world where anyone can be devoured by circumstances, Andreas survives by staying level-headed. I think that the story is in the same vein as Final Fantasy Tactics or Final Fantasy XII. The best part of the story isn't the main plot, but rather the attention to detail in the interactions between characters. These characters feel like they're truly living in that world. Sadly, we don't get to explore this world. The free exploration sections of the game are only restricted to inside your mercenary headquarters buildings, so you can't go outside to talk to villagers or explore the towns. There is a library where you can read about the history of the world, which helps a bit. Perhaps one does not need to visually see the world to imagine it. This is another reason why this game is for mature people. The world is indeed rich, but the richness is in the details, rather than directly projected. Some of the story is told through a narrator accompanied by static images. The cutscenes have little choreography, and most lines are not fully voiced, but rather accompanied with voiced interjections. The presentation looks nice, but is lacking high production value. DioField Chronicles isn't a real-time strategy game in the purest sense, because the action pauses when you're inputting commands, yet it retains much of the essence of real-time strategy. You move 4 combat units independently by giving them commands at any time. The 2 most basic commands are the move command, which causes the unit to move to the specified location, and the attack command, which causes the unit to walk and then attack once in range. All the action happens in real time, so you can give new commands at any time. Commanding multiple units can be chaotic, as your attention can be split between multiple threats at once. However, the beauty of RTS is embracing the chaos and pushing yourself to make the best tactical judgments in the most timely inputs. Really, the sky is the limit for mastery of this genre. Occasionally, enemies will charge up a powerful attack, and the ground will display a red area. You can choose to walk out of the area to avoid the damage. You can also use a special skill to stun the enemy and cancel their attack, but this costs EP and it doesn't do a lot of damage, so the choice is yours. Some enemies drop orbs, and some missions have orbs lying on the field. Blue orbs refill your TP, purple orbs refill your EP, and green orbs refill your HP. Finding the time to collect orbs in the heat of battle is quite fun. You can consume a TP point to summon a mystical creature like Bahamut to vaporize the enemies. There are 4 distinct classes, which are the Warrior, Cavalier, the Sharpshooter, and the Magicker. Each class is divided into subtypes. All of the classes are really cool. For example, the Horse-type Cavalier focuses on positioning. Not only do they move faster, but they also have skills that change the position of both themselves and the enemy. For example, the move called Full Frontal Assault charges your unit in the specified location while dealing damage to enemies on the way. Positioning is super important because of the ambush system. If any unit gets hit from behind, they take extra damage. This is such a simple but profound concept. For those familiar with RTS like StarCraft, DioField Chronicles lacks many of the RTS mechanics. You don't have a base, and you can't build new units in the midst of battle. You're only limited to controlling 4 characters, which is very few compared to most RTS. Limiting the things you have to manage works perfectly on console, which makes the thumbstick controls less of a handicap. This game has many RPG elements, including experience and levels of characters, skill points, buying equipment, and such. You can bring 3 consumable items with you into a battle. You can use them at any time, but you can't rely on them for healing because there are simply not enough permission. You probably need to bring a Magicker for healing. You can swap between one of the active units with its backup unit only 3 times per mission, which makes each swap purposeful and deliberate. While a unit is active, they can also use the skill of the backup unit. This means you can have a mage with knight skills or a horseman with archer skills. This game can be challenging. If you do all of the main missions, you will be woefully underleveled. Even the easy difficulty can be hard for newcomers, so if you want to play this game to experience the story, there is no easy way around combat. Thankfully, the game provides an abundance of optional quests, which does a decent enough job at keeping you at the right level. I spent roughly 30 hours on the game, which includes doing all of the side quests. Some side quests are as simple as talking to a character. However, the quest dialogue is amazing. I see it as a handy way to squeeze in extra character development without making it mandatory. All the maps have optional objectives, like completing them in a certain time limit or not letting a character die. Completing these special objectives will yield rare upgrade materials for your weapons and summoning enhancements. I like the combat overall, but it's not deep enough to keep me playing for hundreds of hours like StarCraft. During the last 5 hours of the game, I was running out of things to upgrade. This game has blurry graphics on the PlayStation 4, where I did my playthrough. It seems to be blurry on purpose, as an aesthetic choice. Or maybe that's just how Unreal Engine 4 looks. I personally don't mind. One of my biggest complaints is that the battle continues on even when you press the PlayStation Home button. This means that you could be on a PlayStation menu, checking your messages, and the game will still keep going and you will die and game over. This is the first game that has this problem. I always make sure to pause the game before I hit the PlayStation Home button. DioField Chronicles is good enough that I will be checking out any potential sequels. The writing is the star of the show, but the heavily political story will wear out gamers who aren't ready to see the ugliness of human nature. Dadozy Gaming gives this game a 7.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching, and happy gaming.